Hey, my name's Ben. I'm 29, and I've been working as a software developer at a mid-sized tech firm in Boston for the past 6 years. It's one of those jobs where you show up on time, plug away at your code, and head home without much fanfare. I don't chase promotions or network at happy hours. I'm the guy who nods politely during team meetings and fades into the background. My life is predictable. Mornings with black coffee, evenings scrolling through Reddit or binge watching old sci fi shows, and weekends catching up with my college buddy Brian over text or the occasional beer. It's safe, comfortable, and honestly, a little boring. But boring works for me. I've never been one to rock the boat. That all started to shift about 6 months ago when Madison took over as head of the engineering department. She transferred in from our San Francisco office, bringing this effortless energy that turned heads without even trying. At 38, she's sharp, decisive, and knows how to lead without micromanaging. She's got this presence, tall, with dark hair usually pulled back in a neat ponytail, and a way of looking at you that makes you feel seen. I remember her first all hands meeting. She outlined our quarter's goals with a calm confidence that made the room sit up straighter. From that day on, I found myself glancing her way more than I should. It wasn't just admiration for her skills, there was something deeper, a pull I couldn't ignore. But what was I supposed to do? She's my boss, divorced, with a kid back in California. Way out of my league and definitely off limits. I kept it all bottled up, of course. The only person I confided in was Brian, my best friend from undergrad. He's the opposite of me, outgoing, always pushing me to take risks. We'd text about everything from work gripes to bad dates. One night, after a long day debugging a stubborn algorithm, I was sprawled on my couch in my cramped one-bedroom apartment in Back Bay. The place is nothing special. Exposed brick walls, a tiny kitchenette stacked with takeout containers, and a view of the alley behind a coffee shop. Brian messaged me out of the blue, "Hey man, how's the office grind? Spotted any cute coworkers yet?" I chuckled and typed back, "Kinda, but it's complicated. My new boss, age gap, divorced. Total no-go zone." He fired back immediately. "Dude, you're too cautious. Life's short. If you like her, test the waters with something subtle. What's the worst that happens?" Brian being Brian, he started spamming me with sample messages. Flirty but classy ones like, "You've got this magnetic energy," or "I admire how you handle everything so gracefully." I rolled my eyes but scanned through them. One stood out, "You're truly captivating. I know this might cross a line, but I'd regret not saying it. Hope you're not bothered." It felt honest, not creepy. I copied it, planning to send it to Brian for approval. But in the rush of our back and forth, I messed up. My thumb slipped on the wrong chat thread. Instead of hitting Brian's name, I pasted and sent it straight to Madison. The second it went through, my stomach dropped. The message stared back at me on the screen, delivered and read. Those two blue ticks appeared almost instantly. Panic hit like a freight train. My face burned, heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. Delete for everyone wouldn't work now. She'd seen it. What the hell had I done? This wasn't some random Tinder match. This was my boss. Visions of HR meetings, awkward silences in the office, or worse, getting fired, flashed through my mind. I paced the room, phone clutched in my sweaty hand, muttering curses under my breath. Should I follow up with an apology? Pretend it was a joke? Before I could decide, her reply popped up. "I'm coming to your place now." I froze. What? My address was in the company directory for emergencies, but now? It was already past 10 p.m. on a weeknight. Was she furious? Coming to fire me in person? Or something else? My mind raced through a dozen scenarios, each worse than the last. I sank onto the couch, staring at the door, the quiet hum of the city outside doing nothing to calm the storm inside me. This mistake could end everything I'd built, or in some twisted way start something I never saw coming. And as the minutes ticked by, all I could do was wait for the knock that would change it all. The knock came sharp and insistent, echoing through my quiet apartment like a thunderclap. I stared at the door for a second, my pulse racing, before forcing myself to move. My hand trembled as I turned the knob, half expecting to see her standing there, with a stern expression, ready to end my career on the spot. But when I opened it, Madison was calmer than I'd imagined. Her coat draped over one arm, hair slightly tousled from the night breeze, and those piercing eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my throat dry. Ben, she said, her voice steady but edged with something I couldn't quite place. Not anger, exactly. More like curiosity laced with challenge. We need to talk. I stepped aside wordlessly, letting her in. She glanced around my cramped living room, the mismatched furniture, the stack of unread books on the coffee table, the faint glow from my laptop screen where I'd been doom scrolling to distract myself. She didn't comment on any of it, just hung her coat on the back of a chair and turned to face me, arms crossed. I closed the door behind her, the click sounding final in the silence. I'm so sorry, I blurted out before she could speak. That message, it wasn't meant for you. I was texting my friend Brian and I copied it wrong. I didn't mean to send it. Please, don't think. She held up a hand, cutting me off. Her expression softened just a fraction, but her gaze didn't waver. Ben, stop. If it was a mistake, fine. But you sent it. And I read it. So let's not pretend it didn't happen. She paused, tilting her head slightly. You called me captivating, said you'd regret not saying it. But now, standing here, looking me in the eye, you can't even repeat it? I felt heat creep up my neck. She was right. I was backpedaling like a coward. The words had felt safe behind a screen, impulsive and detached. But here, with her in my space, the air thick with unspoken tension, it was real. Too real. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to meet her eyes. Okay, I said quietly. You're right. It wasn't entirely a mistake. I do think that about you. You've been on my mind since you started at the company. Not just because you're my boss, but because you're incredible. The way you handle everything, the team, the projects, it's inspiring. And yeah, captivating. But I know it's crossing a line. You're my superior. There's the age difference, your divorce. I get it if this makes things awkward. Madison uncrossed her arms, her posture relaxing as she leaned against the kitchen counter. For the first time, a small smile tugged at her lips, not mocking, but almost relieved. Awkward? Ben, you have no idea. She let out a soft laugh, shaking her head. Do you know how many times I've lingered by your desk, pretending to check on a code review just to chat a little longer? Or how I've caught myself wondering what you're like outside the office? My mouth went dry. You… what? She nodded, her expression turning more serious. Yeah, it's not one-sided, but I've been careful. After my divorce, I promised myself no complications at work. My ex was in the industry too. Things got messy. And with my son living with his dad across the country, I've focused on rebuilding, stability. But then there's you. Quiet, reliable, with that thoughtful way of approaching problems. It's attractive. We stood there for a moment, the weight of her words hanging between us. I motioned to the couch and she sat, tucking one leg under her. I joined her, keeping a respectful distance, my mind reeling. This wasn't how I pictured the night going, me confessing, her reciprocating. We talked for what felt like hours, the conversation flowing in a way I'd never experienced. Madison opened up about her marriage, how it started passionate but crumbled under the strain of long hours and differing priorities. I gave up a lot, she said softly. Friends, hobbies, even parts of myself. Now at 38, I'm figuring out who I am again. It's scary, but freeing. I shared, too, about growing up in a small Ohio town, moving to Boston for college and staying for the job market. How I'd always played it safe, avoiding relationships that might disrupt my routine. I've dated, I admitted, but nothing stuck. I guess I was waiting for something real. And then you showed up. She listened intently, her eyes never leaving mine. There was no rush, no awkward silences. Just two people connecting in the dim light of my living room lamp. At one point, she reached out and briefly touched my arm. Ben, that message, it caught me off guard, but in a good way. It's been a while since someone saw me like that, not as the boss, but as me. As the clock ticked past midnight, she glanced at her watch. I should go, early meeting tomorrow. She stood, grabbing her coat, and I walked her to the door. Before stepping out, she turned back. I don't know where this goes, if anywhere, but tonight, I got to be myself. Thank you for that. She left with a soft smile, the door clicking shut behind her. I leaned against it, exhaling a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. What had just happened? A mistake had turned into a revelation, and for the first time in years, my safe little world felt alive with possibility. The days after that unexpected visit blurred into a strange, new normal. I woke up the next morning half convinced it had been a dream. Madison in my apartment, sharing vulnerabilities over late night confessions, but her final words lingered. I got to be myself. It echoed in my mind as I showered, dressed, and headed to the office, my stomach twisting with a mix of excitement and dread. Would things be awkward? Would she avoid me? Or worse, act like nothing happened? At work, everything was professional. Madison led our morning stand up with her usual poise, assigning tasks and fielding questions without a single glance that betrayed what had transpired. When she passed by my desk later, it was to ask about a bug fix in the latest sprint, purely work related. Looks good, Ben, she said evenly, her eyes meeting mine for just a second longer than necessary. In that brief moment, I caught a subtle warmth, a silent acknowledgement. It was our secret code. We're okay, but careful. We didn't text right away. I resisted the urge to message her, not wanting to push boundaries too soon. But that evening, as I microwaved a frozen burrito and settled in with my laptop, my phone buzzed. It was her. A photo of a steaming mug of tea on her kitchen counter captioned, "Winding down after a long day." You? I stared at it, a smile creeping across my face. Simple. Innocuous. Safe. I replied with a shot of my own half-eaten dinner. Same here. Rough sprint, but surviving. That tea looks better than my sad meal. From there, it evolved naturally. Our exchanges stayed light at first, sharing articles about tech trends, recommending podcasts, or venting about minor office annoyances without naming names. Ever feel like you're the only one who gets the big picture? She'd write. I'd respond, all the time. But it's easier when you know someone's got your back. We avoided anything overtly personal, but the undercurrent was there, building like a quiet hum. A week later, on a rainy Friday, she messaged, "Free tomorrow night? I make a mean pasta, no pressure, just dinner at my place." My heart skipped. Dinner. At her place. It felt like a step forward, but one we could still frame as casual if needed. I agreed, spending the next day overthinking my outfit. Jeans and a button-down, nothing too try-hard. Her apartment was in a nicer part of Cambridge, a cozy two-bedroom with high ceilings and big windows overlooking the Charles River. When she opened the door, she looked relaxed in a simple sweater and jeans, her hair down for once. "Come on in," she said with a genuine smile. "Hope you're hungry." The place smelled amazing. Garlic, tomatoes, fresh basil. She had a pot of spaghetti sauce simmering on the stove and a bottle of red wine breathing on the counter. Polaroid photos dotted the walls, snapshots of beaches, cityscapes, and a few with her son, a grinning kid with her eyes. Small succulents lined the windowsill, adding a touch of green to the neutral tones. It felt lived in, personal, a far cry from my minimalist setup. We ate at her kitchen island, twirling pasta and sipping wine. Conversation flowed effortlessly, dipping into territories we'd only skimmed before. She talked about her divorce in more detail, not with bitterness, but reflection. "It wasn't one big fight," she said, setting down her fork. "Just years of drifting. He wanted kids right away. I wanted to build my career first. By the time we had our son, we were already strangers. Now he's with his dad most of the time, and I video call every night. It's hard, but we're making it work." I nodded, sharing my own stories. Growing up in rural Ohio where everyone knew your business, and escaping to Boston for the anonymity. "I thought the city would make me feel alive," I admitted. "But mostly it's just lonely until recently." She looked at me then, her gaze softening. "Ben, do you regret that message? The one that started all this?" I set my glass down, meeting her eyes. "No, if I hadn't sent it, mistake or not, I'd still be wondering what if, pretending I didn't feel this way." The air shifted, charged with unspoken meaning. She reached across the island, her fingers brushing mine lightly. It was tentative, almost hesitant, but electric. "Thank you for saying that," she murmured. It's been a long time since someone saw past the title, the role. Since I felt desired, I guess. Not just competent. I didn't pull away. Instead, I turned my hand, letting our fingers intertwine. Her skin was warm, her touch sending a quiet thrill through me. We sat like that for a while, the rain pattering against the windows, the world outside fading. No rush, no expectations. Just the start of something deeper, more vulnerable. As the night wound down, I helped clear the dishes, our shoulders brushing in the small kitchen. When it was time to go, she walked me to the door, her hand lingering on my arm. "This was nice," she said softly. "Really nice." I left her apartment that night with a sense of possibility I hadn't felt in years. But beneath it, a fragile awareness. This was real now, and with reality came risks we couldn't ignore forever. Our connection deepened in those early weeks, but so did the complications. After that dinner at her place, where her touch had lingered on my hand like a promise, I found myself replaying the evening over and over. The way the rain had drummed against her windows, the subtle vulnerability in her voice. It all felt like the start of something profound. But reality crept in fast. Monday morning hit like a cold splash, pulling me back to the fluorescent lit office where she was still my boss, and I was still just another dev on her team. At first, the shift was subtle. We'd exchange knowing glances across the conference room during meetings, or she'd brush past my desk with a quick "good work on that pull" request that carried an extra layer of warmth. But we were careful. No lingering conversations, no texts during work hours. Still, people notice things. Tech offices are breeding grounds for gossip. Everyone's glued to Slack, and one overheard comment can snowball. It started with a team lunch about 2 weeks after our dinner. I was grabbing coffee in the break room when I caught snippets from two junior engineers huddled by the vending machine. "Did you see Ben and Madison in that huddle yesterday? They were talking forever." The other laughed. "Yeah, he's probably angling for a raise. Or something more." I froze, pretending to fiddle with the creamer, but my face burned. Were we that obvious? I hadn't thought so, but paranoia set in. By the end of the week, the whispers had escalated. A senior dev I'd collaborated with on a project suddenly went radio silent on my Slack messages, responding only with curt one-liners. At the Friday happy hour, which I usually skipped but attended to seem normal, a few people shot me sidelong glances. One even joked, "Hey Ben, heard you're Madison's new favorite. What's your secret?" I forced a laugh, mumbling something about clean code, but inside I was unraveling. This wasn't just about me, it could tank her reputation. She was the only woman in upper management, already under scrutiny. Rumors like this could undermine everything she'd built. That night, alone in my apartment with a beer I barely touched, I messaged her. "We need to talk. Things are getting weird at work." Her reply came quick. "I know, come over." I didn't. Instead, I typed out what I'd been dreading. "Maybe we should hit pause, at least until the heat dies down. I don't want this to hurt you. Or us." The ellipsis bubbled for what felt like forever. Then, "Ben, no, not like this." An hour later, there was a knock at my door. Madison stood there, rain-slicked hair and a determined look, her coat dripping onto the welcome mat. "Let me in," she said, not a question. I did, and she strode past me, shaking off the water. Pausing, really, after everything we shared? I closed the door, rubbing my temples. "Madison, people are talking. I heard comments today, implying I'm getting favors because of whatever this is. It's not fair to you. You're the boss. This could ruin your credibility." She paced the room, her frustration evident. "You think I haven't dealt with worse? I've been in this industry for 15 years, whispers about my divorce, questions about whether I can handle the role as a single mom. It's noise, Ben. But if we hide or back down, we're letting it win." She stopped, facing me, her eyes fierce. "I walked away from my marriage because I was tired of pretending. I'm not doing that again, not with you." Her words hit hard. I sank onto the couch and she joined me, closer this time. "I'm scared too," she admitted softly. "But I've lost enough by playing it safe. If this means something, and I think it does, then we face it head on." We talked late into the night, hashing out the risks. HR policies on office relationships were gray areas. Disclosure was encouraged, but not mandatory unless there was a direct reporting conflict. By dawn, we'd decided transparency was our best shot. The next week, I requested a transfer to our satellite office in Cambridge. A smaller team, same company, but no direct oversight from her. It meant a longer commute and stepping away from my current projects, but it was doable. Madison, meanwhile, scheduled a meeting with upper management. "I'll disclose the relationship," she said. "No details, just facts. If they have an issue, we'll deal with it." The fallout wasn't as bad as I'd feared. My transfer went through smoothly with a pat on the back for proactive career growth. Madison's disclosure led to a brief HR chat. Standard stuff about avoiding favoritism, but no reprimands. The rumors? They fizzled once everything was out in the open. A few colleagues raised eyebrows, but most shrugged it off. Tech moves fast, and there were bigger dramas brewing in sales. Through it all, our bond strengthened. The challenges forced us to communicate like never before, setting boundaries, checking in on each other's stress. One evening after my first day at the new office, she called, "Missed seeing you today." I smiled into the phone. "Me too, but this feels right." Solid. We were no longer sneaking around. We were building something real, mature, resilient. And in facing the storm together, I realized this wasn't just infatuation. It was the kind of connection that could last. With the storms of office gossip and HR scrutiny behind us, Madison and I settled into a rhythm that felt both new and profoundly right. My transfer to the Cambridge satellite office meant I saw less of the main team, but it also gave me space to breathe. Fewer prying eyes, more focus on the work itself. The commute across the river added 20 minutes each way, but I didn't mind. It became my time to reflect, listening to podcasts or just watching the city wake up. Madison stayed put as head of engineering, her days packed with meetings and deadlines, but she handled it with the same grace that had drawn me to her in the first place. We didn't broadcast our relationship, no social media posts, no grand announcements, but those who needed to know did, and the rest faded into irrelevance. Our time together evolved into something mature, unhurried. Weekends became our sanctuary. I'd show up at her place with groceries and we'd cook together. Simple things like grilled salmon with asparagus or her favorite stir fry, chopping vegetables side by side in her sunlit kitchen. We'd talk about everything and nothing. A frustrating client call she'd had, a new hiking trail I wanted to try, or just the quiet satisfaction of a day well spent. Evenings often ended with us on her couch, reading in companionable silence, her with a novel, me with a tech journal, our feet tangled under a shared blanket. It wasn't flashy romance, it was real, grounded in the everyday. One of the biggest shifts came with her son, Ethan. He was 10, a bright kid with a mop of curly hair and an endless curiosity about gadgets. He lived mostly with his dad in San Francisco, but visited every other month, flying out for weekends or holidays. The first time I met him properly was during a school break. Madison had prepped me. He's shy at first, but once he warms up, he'll talk your ear off about video games. When he arrived, I hung back, letting them have their reunion. Hugs at the airport pickup, ice cream on the way home. That evening, as Madison prepped dinner, Ethan eyed me curiously from the living room. "Mom says you fix computers," he said finally. "Yeah," I replied, sitting on the floor with him. "Want to see how one works?" I pulled out my laptop, showing him the basics, how to open the task manager, what RAM does. Before long, he was hooked, asking questions faster than I could answer. We spent the next day building Lego sets, me helping him troubleshoot a wonky tower, while Madison watched from the doorway with a soft smile. "You're good with him," she said later, after he'd gone to bed. "Better than I expected." Over time, I became a fixture in those visits. We'd take him to the Boston Common for picnics, where he'd chase pigeons while we held hands on a bench. Or I'd help fix his tablet when it glitched, turning it into a mini lesson. Ethan started calling me Ben the Tech Guy, and once shyly asked if I could come to his soccer game next time he visited. It wasn't about stepping into a father role, that was his dad's territory, but about being there, steady and present. Madison confided one night as we lay in bed listening to the city hum outside. "Seeing you with him, it makes this feel like more than just us." We didn't rush milestones. No talks of moving in together, no ring shopping. Instead, we built our happiness in layers. She introduced me to her favorite indie bookstore in Harvard Square, where we'd wander the aisles picking out reads for each other. I took her to a quiet jazz bar in the South End, where we'd sip cocktails and sway to the music without a care. One rainy afternoon, as we walked along the river path under shared umbrellas, I brought up the message again, the one that had kicked everything off. If I hadn't sent that by mistake, I said, do you think we'd be here? She stopped, turning to face me, droplets clinging to her lashes. Honestly, I think I would have found a reason. Maybe a code review that dragged on too long, or bumping into you at the coffee machine one too many times. She laughed, pulling me closer. But I'm glad it happened the way it did. It forced us to be honest from the start. That honesty carried us through the quieter challenges too. There were nights when her ex called about Ethan, stirring up old frustrations, and I'd just hold her, listening without trying to fix it. Or days when work piled up for me and she'd show up with takeout, reminding me to unplug. We weren't perfect. Arguments cropped up over small things, like her late hours clashing with my need for routine. But we talked them out, emerging stronger each time. A year in, as we sat on her balcony watching the sunset over the skyline, she turned to me. I used to dream of fairy tale endings, she said quietly. Big weddings, perfect lives. But now, this is better. Waking up knowing someone's there, not because they have to be, but because they choose to. I squeezed her hand. Me too. That message wasn't just a mistake, it was the push I needed to stop hiding. We stayed like that as the city lights flickered on below, the world bustling around us. No vows exchanged, no labels slapped on. Just two people who'd crossed a line and found something worth holding on to. In a city of millions, we'd carved out our own quiet space, real, resilient, and ours. And for the first time, my safe life didn't feel limiting, it felt full.